Right, I'm speaking to Michelle Siebert from the House of Camille. And Michelle, hi, how are you today?
I'm very well, thanks, Fiona. How are you?
Good, okay. Just got a few questions to ask you. How did you get into reflexology?
I started off my training as a beauty therapist, and one of the courses that I enrolled for was a course that taught aromatherapy massage along with foot reflexology. And I said to the teacher that was teaching this is back in Africa, that I didn't really want to do the reflexology side because I could think of nothing worse than touching people's feet all day long. So she said there was no ways that she could split the course up because whatever you did with the aromatherapy, you confirmed when you did the feet. So she says you have to do the whole course. So I did it, and the reflexology side that she taught me was really quite basic. It was really just finding a reflex point, putting your thumb on it or your knuckle on it and pressing, and that was about it. And it was enough for me to get quite excited about it because, I didn't know what I was really doing, but I would push something and I'd ask the client, have you had your appendix removed? And they would say, oh yes, how did you know that? And I thought, well, I don't know how I knew that, but I just knew that. So it got me slightly interested. And soon after I finished that course, there was a little advert in our local newspaper about another course that was being offered by the International Institute of Reflexology. So I phoned the lady who lived about 2.5 hours away from the city that I was living in at that time, and I asked her all about the course, and I said, I'm quite interested in it, and I just really wanted to make an investigation into the course. So she said to me, well, why don't you come this weekend, because we're having a lecture this weekend. We've got a doctor coming in, and we're dissecting a heart, and we're doing a lecture on the cardiovascular system. So I said, okay, that sounds good fun. So I drove through to her town and attended this lecture and had this doctor, and he was dissecting this heart and putting his fingers down all the valves and showing you all the different chambers of the heart, and it was all very interesting. And I learned quite a bit that day, and I really thought, because of my training as a beauty therapist, that I pretty much knew a lot of anatomy and physiology. But when I looked at their course material and I could see all the anatomy that they taught along with foot reflexology, that is what really got me interested. So there and then I signed up on the dotted line, and I did the course with her. So it meant every month that I'd have to do the drive of the 2.5 hours up to her town, and I would spend the day there with her and then drive home that evening. So it was a very long day, but the course was at that stage a year long, so I did that. And then soon after I'd finished that course, the head of the International Institute in South Africa was a lady called Lillian Tipshirani, and she came up to Zimbabwe, which is where I was from, and she actually did the qualification of the students. So we had to do a practical exam on her, and of course we had a theory paper to write. So after I had qualified with Lillian, she then asked me if I would be interested in teaching reflexology in Zimbabwe. So there was a little bit of a reshuffle done where my tutor, who was Beatrix Locke, she would teach the northern half of Zimbabwe, and I would teach the southern half of Zimbabwe. So for 7 odd years I taught for the International Institute of Reflexology in Zimbabwe. And then political problems happened in Zimbabwe, and I decided to leave Zimbabwe and landed up here in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, I wasn't here too long when I was approached by the Reflexology Association and asked if I would consider opening up a school here in Auckland, because there was no school at that time teaching reflexology.
And so what year was that?
That would probably have been about 2003, 2004, somewhere around there.
Okay, so was that the day when there were 2 organisations, or there was still just one organisation?
There was still just the one, yeah.
And so that was the RAA back then, was it?
No, it was the RNZ.
Oh, okay. Right. And so then you did some training with Dwight Byers at some stage?
So when they said would I teach here in Auckland, I got hold of Dwight Byers and I said to him that, I've been asked to open up a school here in New Zealand. So he said, right, in order for you to just upskill, he says, I'd like you to come to America and I'd like you to come and do a couple of the courses with me, and I'll give you a crash course in all the advanced techniques and hand reflexology, which was new to them. They had done an older one, but they now had a new hand reflexology system and a new book that was on the way. And so he asked me to come over. So I flew over to America. I think it was in 2005. I went over to see him. He picked me up at the airport at midnight, drove me to my hotel and made sure that nobody was in my hotel room, and then left me to it. And then the next day he picked me up and we went through to his office, and I spent 18 days with Dwight, attending a course that he was running over the weekend, but also having one-on-one training with him and doing a lot of role play. Dwight is quite particular about how you stand, how you gesture, what colour clothing to wear, because of the aesthetic look and how he believes that it helps people to learn. So it was an intense 18 days, but it was a very lovely time because I would have meals in the evening with him. They also took me away to their holiday home, and every morning Dwight would get me up at 6 o'clock in the morning and we'd go for a 3K run down the beach, and then we'd have a little swim together, and then we'd have to go home and have breakfast, and then we were to the office to go and do some more work. So it was a very, very enjoyable time, and it was the time that Dwight used to polish off all the make sure that the teaching style was perfected and that we all taught exactly like he required, the system that he used and the techniques that he used.
And so have you trained, how many reflexologists do you think you've trained since you have been teaching?
In Africa, I think I counted about 60 in Africa. And then here in New Zealand, I think I'm probably around the 30 mark.
And is that with the beauty therapy training, or is it just reflexology?
Just reflexology, yes. And it's for the International Institute of Reflexology. This job that I do here at the Beauty College is completely separate. So yeah, we separate the two out.
And do you want to see that? That's all right. That's all right. I'll put it on hold.